Well, it seemed like the story was actually beginning to pick up after Episode 4. Episode 5 turned out to be nothing more than mostly generic filler, unfortunately. While it seemed like we would finally be leaving Numenor this episode, that unfortunately never happens until the very end of the episode. Leading up to that, we see Galadriel training the new recruits as she challenges them to land a single hit on her in order to get a promotion, though she effortlessly fends them off, of course, until Isildur's friend manages to land a single hit on her and is promoted to a lieutenant. We also get some drama between Isildur and his father, as Elendil does not believe that Isildur has earned his place among the troops heading off for Middle-earth, and so Isildur spends this episode making amends with his friends and also proving to his father that he is in fact worthy of going to Middle-earth, along with the rest of the volunteers. And then there is Halbrand, who has absolutely no desire to ever return to Middle-earth. He remains adamant about this claim until the very end, where he decides to change his mind for seemingly no reason. There were a few good moments in the Numenor part of the episode, such as Galadriel finally opening up to Halbrand and admitting that she is obsessed with battle, and also explaining to Halbrand why she was sent away from her people due to their fear of Galadriel's desire for battle consuming her and turning her into what she sought to destroy. Hopefully, Galadriel admitting to these flaws lead to her beginning to grow as a character and slowly become who we see her as in Lord of the Rings. Although I also wish that Halbrand had trusted Galadriel enough in this moment to open up to her about his past so that we could actually know why he doesn't want to return and how he managed to end up on the sea to begin with. We also get to see Pharazôn scheming this episode and revealing why he has decided to support Galadriel in this war for Middle-earth, as he plans on using this war as a means of controlling the people of Middle-earth and having them forever in the debt of Numenor, which I really wish we would get to see more of this political scheming in this series. And so at the very end of this episode, we are finally departing Numenor, which is honestly where I had hoped we would be at the start of this episode, not at the very end of it, as the training exercises didn't really serve much of a purpose other than showing off Galadriel's capabilities, which we were already aware of, and I feel like the drama between Isildur and his father could have been something covered on their voyage to Middle-earth, but at least it finally seems like we're getting somewhere with this plotline. The other part that mostly felt like filler was the story with the people in the south, as the orcs spend this entire episode preparing to attack the tower, leaving Arondir time to train the people hiding in the tower. We see him training Theodore on how to fight, and Theodore decides to reveal the sword to Arondir, who recognizes the blade from a sculpture in the tower. And from here we get the reveal that the sword is actually a key, though we don't know what it's a key for, or what will happen when the orcs retrieve the key. But at least now we know why they are so desperate to reclaim this sword. But what I think is the biggest missed opportunity with this part of the episode is when half of the people decide to defect to Sauron. I felt like the way it was handled seemed to eliminate a lot of the tension that could have been present throughout this episode, as we just get a single scene where the old man who originally had the sword begins making a case for joining Sauron, and after giving a speech to persuade everyone to join him, about half the townspeople go with him, and they all just leave the tower to go join Sauron. I feel like there would have been more tension had they decided to stay in the tower, as they could try and convince the rest of the townspeople to join Sauron, and slowly destroy the morale of those who are against joining Sauron. It also could have led to more conflict between the people who wished to join Sauron and those who wished to oppose him, but instead those who wish to join Sauron simply leave the tower, leaving those who wish to remain free behind. Though when the people loyal to Sauron make it to the village full of orcs, they are met with the realization that Adar isn't Sauron, though they still claim loyalty to him anyways and are forced to sacrifice a child in order to prove their loyalty. This part of the episode ends with the orcs finally making their move against the tower, and the people who remain questioning if they should have joined Sauron after all. Though this part of the episode also revealed another glaring issue I have with this series, which is that we don't really know if the events happening are occurring simultaneously, or if there's a big time gap between each of the stories we are following. So while it seems like the Numenorians are on their way to help the people in the south, I'm not sure if the timelines will match up, as we see that the orcs are about to march on the tower at night, though when we see the Numenorians depart from Numenor, it seems to be early sunrise. So will the Numenorians arrive at the tower after the orcs have completely wiped out everyone there? Or has the entire plot in Numenor taken place weeks or perhaps months before the plotline in the south, and they are about to converge? It's impossible to know, as this show doesn't give a solid timeline as to when these events are occurring. Now, as for the other parts of the episode, they managed to fare slightly better and actually make more progress on the story. The characters with the least amount of screen time this episode were the Harfoots. We basically just get a walking montage of their migration before they're attacked by wolves, and the stranger manages to fend off the wolves with magic, though we see that it does take a toll upon him, and I can only assume this is because he is channeling powerful magic through his hands, and will explain why wizards need staffs to channel power so that it does not affect their bodies, as seems to be the case here, where he performs magic without the use of a staff. We then see the stranger healing himself with some sort of ice magic, though Nori tries to stop him, which accidentally ends up injuring her, and will no doubt cause some tension between them in the next episode, as Nori now fears that his magic could actually be harmful to those around her. We also get the reveal of perhaps the most mysterious character we have encountered thus far, and the one character many people theorized to be Sauron in the trailer. She is known only as the Dweller, and while we know pretty much nothing about her or the people who are accompanying her, we do know that she is after the stranger for some reason, as we see her discovering the crater that he made upon falling from the sky, and she will no doubt be trying to track him down. Now I think there's only really two options that she could be associated with. There's the obvious one that she is a minion of Sauron tracking down the wizard because the wizard would prove a threat to Sauron's power, though I also feel there's a strong chance that she is connected to the Blue Wizards. If it turns out that the stranger is in fact one of the Blue Wizards, then it could be that the Dweller is actually the first Blue Wizard, trying to seek out this other being who is like her. While the Blue Wizards are supposed to be men, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon had decided to gender swap one of them, though it could also be that she is working for the first Blue Wizard, though I'm guessing we won't get any conclusive answers until the very end of the season at the pace that this series has been moving at. But finally we get to what has been the most consistently good part of the series, being Elrond and Durin. This episode actually made a lot of progress with this plotline, and I felt like most of the jokes actually managed to land here. We finally learn the truth as to why Elrond was originally sent to Durin, as while Elrond believed he was trying to just rekindle his friendship with Durin in order to assist Celebrimbor with the creation of his forge, it turns out that both King Gil-galad and Celebrimbor had been manipulating Elrond in order to discover if the dwarves had truly discovered Mithril. While at first Elrond refuses to break his vow he made to Durin and not reveal that the dwarves had discovered Mithril, Gil-galad manages to reveal to Elrond that the elves are slowly dying. It turns out that there is this special tree to the elves that is beginning to rot away, and that the death of this tree represents the light of the Valinor fading. However, Gil-galad believes that Mithril was created when a Silmaril was destroyed by a Balrog and its light seeped into the roots of the mountain, creating Mithril. And he believes that if the elves are able to acquire enough Mithril, then it will be able to sustain their immortality, and thus Elrond is left with the difficult decision of staying true to his vow to Durin and not revealing the Mithril, at the cost of potentially his entire race dying out. Now this is something that didn't really make too much sense to me. At least with the work of Tolkien that I'm familiar with, I never got the impression that Mithril was created from the light of a Silmaril. Sure, the mineral was extremely durable and beautiful, though I never got the impression that the elves were seeking it out due to its ability to maintain their immortality once the light had faded. Though from what I could find online, it seems like this explanation for Mithril's existence was completely made up by Amazon, and isn't an actual part of Tolkien's lore. Though in the show itself, Elrond also doubts if this myth is true, so it could still turn out that Mithril doesn't have the property of preserving elves' immortality after their light fades. Of course, once Elrond learns that the fate of his species is on the line, he reveals the piece of Mithril gifted to him by Durin to Celebrimbor, who reveals that the mineral is in fact the one that the elves have been searching for to preserve their life. But rather than trying to take the rest of the Mithril by force, Elrond decides to negotiate with Durin and explains the plight of the elves to him, to which Durin agrees to help the elves. And Durin seems to take pleasure in the fact that the fate of the elves lies on his shoulders. So Durin and Elrond set off for Khazad-dûm once again to try and convince Durin's father to restart the Mithril mines. Overall, I felt this was definitely one of the stronger episodes. Though it was disappointing seeing that half of it was just filler, there were some great character moments here, and the humor actually managed to land in some parts. Though unfortunately, my feelings on this series still really haven't changed since the very beginning, as so far this series hasn't really felt like characters making decisions to push the story along, but more like the characters we follow are pieces on a board slowly being moved around into the positions that the showrunners want them to be in for the end of the season, regardless of how much sense it makes for these characters to go along with the decisions being made. So with only 3 episodes left, I don't have very high hopes for this season improving too much, as it seems like the next 3 episodes will just be build-up for Arondir and Galadriel fighting Adar, Durin and Elrond encountering the Balrog, and the Dweller encountering the Stranger and us perhaps finally figuring out if they are in fact the Blue Wizards or some other characters. Though so far this series has failed to actually make these characters engaging for the most part. But these have just been my thoughts on the 5th episode of The Rings of Power. Let me know what you've thought in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.